by Blurredography. What's going on, everybody? It's me, Mark, and I'm back again with another Blurredcast podcast, and I'm here today with another very special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
Hello, I am Chauna Lawson. Some people know me as CC The Geek. I'm a cosplayer, philanthropist, founder, and president and CEO of HBCU Con.
And thank you for just coming on. I am so very honored to have you here today. We have some very interesting things to talk about. First, where can my audience find you on social media and the internet?
Oh, sure. So of course you can follow HBCU Con at HBCU Con on Facebook and Instagram. And also you can follow us on Twitter at Con HBCU, CON HBCU. We also have a link tree on our Instagram page and on our Facebook page. And you can follow me on all platforms at CC The Geek, except for Twitter, I'm CC The Greek Geek.
Okay, fascinating. So since we're both geeks here, why don't you tell us what you've been geeking out to lately? What type of shows or video games or cons or anything in the geek sphere you've been doing recently?
Sure. Oh my gosh. Things I've been geeking out on. The Witcher, Demon Slayer's probably my latest obsession, if you will. That's where I'm geeking out the most in terms of like recent stuff. Trying to think. I've gotten into the Peacemaker. My co-host on Everybody Gets One podcast got me into that. And trying to think of what else. I recently geeked out on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because I had heard so many great things about it that I was like, oh, let me go ahead and check it out, see what all the fuss is about, and it was well warranted. But yeah, and cosplay wise, I did do Lana Kane recently. I had done it in MagFest back in 2020, but I didn't really get a chance to shoot in it. And then of course when the pandemic hit, it was just like, well. But yeah, that's pretty much like my cosplay stuff. I did do a Nux and a Moon late last year, I would say last September. So that was probably one of my proudest cosplay moments because it took so much thought and planning to execute it. And it was a character that I always wanted to do, but I was always like too nervous about doing it because it's straight up body paint pretty much. And then other than that, it's just been planning and implementing for HBCU Con. You know, we had our 2021 event, which was virtual. We were supposed to have our 2020 event, but then it got canceled 6 to 8 weeks prior, when the quarantine hit. But we did manage to have a successful virtual 2021 event, and we're having our first hybrid event this year, 2022. So a lot of moving parts, but all good things.
That's good. I'm glad everything's going well, and we're definitely going to get into the HBCU Con. I have a ton of questions to ask you about that.
Okay.
But we'll get there a little bit later. But you mentioned Peacemaker. How are you enjoying Peacemaker? As of we're recording this today, I believe this season finale aired, and I watched it early this morning, and I enjoyed it. But I would love to know your take on the show.
Oh my gosh. Well, to be fair, I do have to catch up on the series. I've only seen like the first 2 episodes, I believe. But I'm really into it. I like John Cena as playing the character. I think it's really cool. And I also think it gives an interesting perspective. It's very kind of double-edged sword because it's showing this dude who was in prison and he's kind of like a reformed racist, reformed bigot, if you will. So I think that that's very interesting, and the nuances of it surrounding this guy who's got like a pet bald eagle. He's like the poster child for the American way in ways that are good and bad. So I think that that's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to see how the show further develops the other characters, like his friends and stuff, because they all seem really interesting. And then of course his dad was like, the poster kid for Fox News. So that was interesting as well. But I love the show. I think it's really like very interesting. The plot is something that's like kind of different from what I've seen in a long time. So like the whole body snatcher thing. But yeah, I like the show. It's definitely like, it's a little bit off from what I would probably choose to watch on my own. But I'm glad that, the guys at Everybody Gets One, my co-hosts, put me onto it because it's really interesting and funny too. It's hilarious.
Well, like you said, you're only in episode 2. It has 8 episodes. You're in for a roller coaster ride of enjoyment. Trust me, every character has their moment to shine. And even Danielle Brooks, one of the main leads in the show, love her to death. I'm so glad she was in it. And not trying to give any spoilers, she definitely stole the series for me in my heart by the finale. So
Yeah.
I cannot wait for you to see it. I
Thank
guarantee
you.
you're going to want to come back on and talk about that show in depth because it's really good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'm here for it.
All right, so now let's segue into the interview questions. And as like with any interview, I would like to just get your geek story. What made you a geek just off of what you can remember? What was some of your geeky experiences growing up? And that nature. Just tell me your geek self.
Oh my gosh. So I've been a geek all my life. I was just telling someone the other day, like it was something that I got labeled long before I came to accept or embrace it. Because at that point, being a geek was the furthest thing from cool. That's, my mom named me after Star Trek. She named me after Chauna C from the original Star Trek series. My father's a Star Wars, particularly a Darth Vader fan because he grew up, admiring James Earl Jones. It's just been something that's been a part of my family since before I was born, much like the HBCU experience, because all my parents are HBCU grads as well, including my stepmom, who attended Grambling and Virginia State. My dad went to my alma mater, Bowie State, and my mother went to the University of District of Columbia, DC for those who, District of Columbia is DC. But yeah, that's pretty much like kind of how it started. And then from there, it just kind of grew into this monster, if you will, where I became this super nerd, got into anime, and comics was probably definitely my first intro into tapping into the geek lifestyle. And particularly through the cartoons that used to come on in the 90s, like Batman, X-Men, Superman, all those good. They were really good, well thought out, well-written shows that were probably a little bit too mature for me. Now that I'm thinking about it, when I first started watching them, it's like, we were really showing this stuff to kids. That was kind of like my intro to the geek world. And then once I discovered anime, even though I had already been watching Speed Racer, but didn't know it was an anime. Once I got introduced to anime formally, I should say, through Sailor Moon, it's just like my whole lens totally changed. It's kind of like when it comes to the nerd community, I find myself almost like I'm in relationship with my love for nerd life, where I'll find reasons to fall in love with it. I feel like anime was one of those times. And then, like, of course, when Black Panther came out, that was like me falling in love with the community all over again, because I got to see, myself or see people who look like us on screen. Yeah, I know I'm kind of rambling, but
No, you're good. You're good. Like I really love hearing everyone's geek story just because it just reminds me of my own and how I came up. And I just like relating to other people based off how they came up and the things that they had to deal with. So I want you to tell me all the nines and tens of everything that you've gone through. My next question for you is, so you mentioned that Sailor Moon was something that stuck out to you a lot as far as with anime. And you was well adept in the Western cartoons. What were some of your favorite? Give me your 3 favorite franchises or movies, comics or toys or whatever it was growing up.
Oh gosh. So like, you want me to be more specific in terms of my fandom? Starting out, I really like, my first big fandom or a big obsession, if you will, was actually dinosaurs. If that's even a thing. I was a big collector of like all the figurines. I had every book you could imagine. It was like a real obsession for me. And then growing up, Space Jam was probably like the first show or movie that I like really, really, really obsessed over, where I needed to have everything Space Jam related. I don't know why. I think maybe because Michael Jordan and the impact of him playing, but then having him be on screen, and he was essentially like the hero of the movie. That kind of, now that I'm looking back on it, I'm just now having this revelation of why that movie impacted me the way it did. Because it kind of showed these athletes, where Black athletes are typically typecast as like brutish, intimidating, but it showed them like in a different light where they were funny, you know, they were smart. It was cool. So that was like really my first big obsession. I had Space Jam, everything all over my room. And then when Sailor Moon came out, you know, when I first got introduced to Sailor Moon, then it was everything Sailor Moon. My whole room had posters everywhere. I still have trading cards to this day that are in my little notebook. And it was kind of like my gateway drug into anime because I liked the show that much that I'm like, oh, I want to watch more shows like this. So, and I haven't really had so much love for a show like I have Sailor Moon until Demon Slayer was released. Like, don't get me wrong, I love all these other animes, but they didn't hit me the same way as Sailor Moon did until Demon Slayer. And I find it interesting that both mangas were written by women because I think that they did a very good job of tapping into like the nuances of all the characters, even the villains. That's something that I really appreciate about Demon Slayer because they kind of took it to the next level where Sailor Moon would do that, and they kind of would show the backstory as to why the villain is the way they are. And I just love that because it makes it, you know, a lot less black and white, where I'll start out hating these demons, and then once I see their stories, I'm like, okay, that sucks. But yeah, those are like the more specific things. And of course, Black Panther, I love me some Shuri. I love Shuri. I feel like Shuri is like the closest thing that I can identify with in terms of like a character. I very much identify with her and her personality.
That's very fascinating. I have a ton of questions I want to ask you about Black Panther, but I'm gonna save that to the end. The first thing I would like to ask you is, you said Space Jam was something that struck a chord with you as a kid. So how do you feel about the new Legacy, the 2021 film that came out last year with LeBron James and all of that movie's theatrics?
You know, I still haven't seen the new one.
Oh, you're so lucky.
And it's not because I'm anti, you know, I'm not anti new Space Jam, if you will. But I think me being a kid, because what Space Jam, the original came out in what, like 97?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think I was like 10. I was at a much more impressionable age. And I feel like maybe if I had children of my own, I would probably be a little bit more compelled to watch it. I do appreciate the fact that they revived it and made it for today's youth, because that's like my whole thing is that this movie, this new rendition is for me to enjoy, but it's not for me necessarily. It's for the new kids, you know, for the kids who are coming up now. So that, and I know that kind of irritates a lot of people in fandoms when it comes to like any show and they revive it and the animation is different, or you know, the format of the show is different. But we got to understand that these shows are being curated for the next generation, and what resonated with us may not necessarily resonate with them. So, you know, that's kind of how I just learned to take it for what it is and accept that I'm, you know, getting older and becoming old cat lady, if you will.
No, trust me, I'm in the same boat. I feel like I'm getting older every day, but I'm still young at heart. That's all that matters. Let me backtrack a little bit, and I want to ask you a little bit about your family life. You said your parents were in the Greek life and they went to HBCUs as well. And obviously that had a huge influence on you wanting to follow in their footsteps. But let me ask you this. How geeky do you consider your parents in your upbringing? And do you think that they had a part to do with your ascension into geek culture?
You know, there's definitely like levels to this. Like I know some folks who like grew up going to cons with their parents, or their parents were avid collectors of comic books and things like that. It was a little bit more complicated for my family because I think that, you know, both my parents are in the youngest of the baby boomers generation, and their parents are in the generation, you know, even before that. So a lot of times they grew up, you know, not feeling safe to really express themselves or indulge in those things because, you know, we didn't have time to. My mom, especially, my mom grew up poor. So, you know, a lot of it was not having access. And she seemed to have gotten a lot more into it as she got older. Because, you know, well, even then, Star Trek was out way in the 60s. My grandmother, though, my mom's mother, was big into Westerns. So I think that kind of planted the seed for my mom, you know, like in that frontier type stuff, where my grandmother's like the Western frontier. My mom is like the final frontier.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then with my dad, you know, I didn't even know that he was such a big nerd until we went to Awesome Con in 2019. And he and my stepmom decided to come through. And I thought he was just coming because I was speaking on a panel and he wanted to support me. And I think that was initially what kind of drew him in, but he also wanted to like kind of see where I'm spending all my time and a good chunk of my money. And when he got there, and it just so happened that they had a Star Wars exhibit at this convention, at this particular convention that year. And I had no idea he was even a Star Wars fan. But once I found out and, you know, we saw the exhibit, he went ballistic, you know, like in the best way. And that was just really kind of like a humbling moment for me. And he even said this, we were walking around the con floor, and he said, you know, I'm realizing that, you know, all this superhero and cosplay stuff and Sailor Moon and everything, he's like, you're just doing all the things you wanted to do when you were a little girl. And that was like, it hit me like a brick in the face, you know, when for him to come to that revelation that I'm just living out my childhood dreams, which is a luxury that people in our generation, especially Black people, often take for granted, because our parents didn't have that luxury of following their dreams more often than not, because they were too tied up trying to survive and trying to, you know, help make a way for us. It's just been really cool, like having matriculated through this world. I've kind of reignited my parents' passions and all the things that they enjoyed when life was simple and when they were younger.
No, I think that's really beautiful, actually, because like you, I kind of had a geek parent, and you know, my dad collected comics and toys and things and would go to conventions. I never went with him, but he always talked about it. And one thing I've always felt is that because of the things that our parents and grandparents had to go through and what they were raised with, and the mindset and society that they lived in, it hindered them from having that connection with us, our generation, who were able to enjoy being a kid for a little bit longer and things like that. So that brings me to my next question. Do you think that there's a disconnect between the older Black communities and generations and the younger Black communities and generations, and why it took so long for geek culture to become the norm in Black communities?
Well, yeah, I think part of that is because, and I was talking about this with some folks who were like in my grandparents' generation, and, you know, they would say, like, for instance, you want to be a scientist, right? So you go around and people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I want to be a scientist. Everyone from your principal to your teachers or any and everyone who has some sort of authority in your life is telling you that you can't do that, that's something that you can't do, and that Black people don't do that. Okay. You know, and that's essentially what it was. Like, even when I think about the women of Hidden Figures and how you had so many brilliant Black women who were doing all this stuff, but look at how they were being treated. So it's like, why would anybody want any parts of that when we already have to deal with racism and oppression and all these other things just going about our regular lives? So I think that it has, you know, kind of become more acceptable now, and that there is a little bit of a generation gap, because, you know, we're so used to living in struggle and kind of living in fear that oftentimes we can be apprehensive and you know, almost afraid of like stepping into our truth and stepping into our liberation. And then that kind of like reinforces the culture of anti-Blackness. So I think that it's on, you know, the onus is really on us to kind of like look after each other, you know, take the things that you need from the elders and leave behind what you don't. You know, understand that everybody's human. Nobody's above the fray of the world, quite frankly. And you just got to take that for what it is. And but having those relationships and conversations with older generations, I think is so important. Like that's something that we, not even just in the Blur community, but in the Black community in general, don't really do that as much as I think we should. And that's by design. It's not by accident, you know, with separations of families and everything. Basically, yeah, I think that there's a lot that we can learn from older generations, especially the older cosplayers who've been doing this for like 15, 20 plus years, when nobody was checking for Black cosplayers and you didn't have social media. Taking lessons from them is so important, but then also understanding that there may be some certain disconnects or you know, disagreements because they're cultured to survive, and it's hard to change that in someone who's in their 50s or 60s or even in their 40s, you know.
I agree. I'm in my 30s, and you said Black people don't do this. I swear that was a trigger phrase from the 90s. Just growing up hearing everybody in my family saying Black people don't draw, Black people don't watch cartoons or anime, Black people can't be Power Rangers, and like, the Black Power Ranger right there in your face. So I think, oh my God, like that opened a whole other can of worms. I have to go to a whole other set of questions when you said that. So let me ask you this, and I'm getting a little sidetracked because you kind of have taken me down a different path than I expected, but I think that's good. With the whole Black people don't do this and Black people don't do that, obviously that's something we've all heard at some point in time in our lives from our parents or our grandparents or, like you said, anyone of authority figure. And we can, that's a whole other episode we can go down that whole long.
And they got it, you know, they had to get it from somewhere, and more than likely they're being told this by non-Black people, like, you can't do this thing.
Well, yeah, I agree. That's exactly what I was going to get to. You just took it out of my head and said it, so there you go. But like I look at my grandparents and my parents and the generation they grew up in. They grew up with the civil rights movement being a thing that they had to deal with every day, and not something they just learned about in, well, I don't want to say in school, but they learned about later. They dealt with segregation. They dealt with the racism, more direct racism that even now we face today. And I think that has shaped the culture, because the one thing that I find interesting, which leads me to my next question, is what are you astonished at how the Black community now accepts geek culture versus how it did, say, even 20 years ago?
Shoot, even more than like 5 or 10 years. Like, even since I've started cosplaying, the landscape has just totally changed. And I didn't realize how much it had changed until I started to like kind of look back on where I started and how much the Blur community has just grown exponentially. And it's become a lot more like inclusive and all encompassing. You have people from all different backgrounds, all different occupations, all different shapes and sizes and localities. So I think that the landscape has absolutely changed. And it's continuing to change. You know, 15, 20 years ago, we ain't have conventions that were designed, or spaces that were designed for Black nerds and Black people, like the Schaumburg and Blurred City. We didn't have those things. And now it's like there's a few of them that you can go to, including HBCU Con. So it's just been really kind of humbling to be a part of this movement. And just like, I feel the weight of it and how important it is to just keep things moving forward and to really be unapologetic about building these spaces and making sure that they are inclusive of blurs of all backgrounds and identities, and not just a select few.
I agree. I definitely agree. So let me ask you this, and I'm getting back more on track now.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to definitely have you back on just to go down that rabbit hole. I think I'm gonna enjoy that conversation with you. But let
I
me ask you
appreciate
this:
that.
you are a Greek and you are a geek.
I
What is
am.
that experience like?
What is the Greek geek experience?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm living a double life. Sometimes I feel like I'm living three different lives between, being a full-time activist and all that. It's a lot more seamless than it used to be, simply because, like I said, the community is growing and becoming more popular. Of course, Black Panther's like the great equalizer, where like it's sucked in every Black person from far and wide into the nerd community. When I first started cosplaying, I had several people, they questioned my nerddom or my geek credibility because I'm in a Greek letter organization. And that was very off-putting to me, primarily because these sororities and fraternities have GPA requirements. So you have to be of a certain academic caliber to even apply for these organizations, let alone make it through the process. So I thought that was very interesting. And that was one of the reasons why I started HBCU Con, because I started to realize there was this unspoken narrative in the community that said, in order for you to be a Black nerd or to be authenticated as a Black nerd, you had to separate yourself from other traditional Black things like fraternities and sororities, or, going to a HBCU or listening to hip hop, unless it was nerdcore. And I just didn't subscribe to that. I didn't believe that I should be put in a box. I can be a myriad of many things. Like people of other races, they get to be a myriad of different things. You can be the nerd and the cheerleader. It's like, why can't I do the same thing? So that was essentially kind of what really sparked HBCU Con, was seeing people's reactions and kind of like not being able to digest the fact that I am a woman, a Black woman who is also in a sorority and a nerd. That was very interesting to me, and it made me realize how much these spaces were needed.
Okay. I actually have a couple of other questions I want to ask you based off the answer.
Okay.
First one I want to ask you, and I've kind of have gotten a male perspective from the Black nerd culture, so I would love to get your perspective on this. But how has being a Black woman and also being into nerdy things affected you personally? And what I mean is, like, obviously we just talked about that Black people weren't supposed to do all these things that we're now into, but I know for Black women, it's especially was a harder just kind of field for you to get into, because like even when you think of geek culture as a whole, it's still mostly a male dominated type of fandom. So how is that for you, being a Black woman, being in culture and being a Greek, and having to uphold your entire culture, heritage, and history, and be the turning point of everybody? How is it being you in today's age, I should say?
Oh man, it's had a tremendous impact on me personally. As much as I want to try to pretend like I'm above it, I'm not. I'm a human being. I got feelings. And I'm very much invested in this community, very passionate about it. So, when things do kind of go not according to plan, it hurts. And I've experienced that journey of seeing the community through rose-colored glasses, and then being rudely awakened by patriarchy, misogynoir, hypersexualization, exploitation, capitalism, and all these other things. And I've lost friends, I've lost business relationships over it. And, I almost lost myself, quite frankly. And I told myself, because even when I was talking to my therapist, like I started going to therapy amidst a lot of the chaos. And my therapist was like, are you sure you want to be part of this community? It seems really toxic. And for her to say that was like, wow. And that was when, like right before she had that conversation with me, I would say right after she had that conversation with me, that's when I started HBCU Con, because I told myself that if I am going to stay in this community, that I am going to be here to make a positive impact and to help ensure that the next generation of women, you know, Black women who come along in this community feel embraced and not just, you know, seen but not heard, if you will. That was something that a friend of mine told me a lot about, the narratives around women, that women are seen and not heard. And I think that that kind of applies to the Black community too. You know, that's essentially why I'm still here, is because my purpose and my ambition to help other people, especially the most marginalized, is really what keeps me going. That and my team and my support system, they really hold me down.
I commend you. I know it's a lot of hard work you got to go through, and I respect everything you do. And personally, I'm glad you're here in the community, because it is very toxic, and we do need other inputs and insights and things. There are just things even in the geek community, even in just blurred culture, that I'm kind of like, this got to change. This has to be different. We got to be more inclusive and have more representation across the board. I myself was raised by Black women, so I just think that Black women have always been the pillar of our culture, because they target every male that's in power and leadership. And after they target the males, the only people are left are the women to hold the family and the community together. So I see firsthand what it's like for Black women to just do anything. My mother's an entrepreneur. She owned her own business and still does it to this day.
I know that's right.
And I'm just like, we need more people doing this. Like, I have no problem working with Black women. It's everybody else that wants their take of the pie. Because I feel like Black women, when Black women are in charge, they bring everybody up. But when you put a Black man there, they kind of assimilate to white male culture a little bit.
Ooh, you just said a mouthful on that one.
I was talking with somebody about this just the other day, about, you know, how Black men and Black women are. But that's again a whole other topic for a whole other day.
Right.
You're just giving me so many.
You speaking facts, though. And of course, it's not all men. You know what I mean? Like, of course. But like, that patriarchy stuff is real. And I had that conversation with somebody the other day. It's like, think about it. If you as a Black man, like, your Blackness doesn't afford you any privilege. There's no such thing as Black privilege, contrary to Charlemagne's book. There's no such thing as Black privilege. So the thing that gets you privilege in a white supremacist patriarchal society is patriarchy. That's the closest that Black men can get to whiteness. So
I don't mean to cut you off, but like,
no, go for it.
My own family, like how my grandfather and how the whole family treats him as the patriarch, and yet my grandmother's sitting there who really kind of been running everything. To be honest, you know, granted, she's been running the house and everything like that, but she's the one keeping the family together. My granddad been doing that. He just wants the respect and the honor that comes with the title. And I'm like, but not really doing. I mean, I'm not saying you're not, because you did do everything you could and now you're in retirement. I get that. But I mean, my wife was there with you the whole time. You didn't do this alone.
Yeah, and it's not to discredit, like, acknowledging Black women and their struggles isn't going to discredit the struggles of Black men. And I think that that's so important to name that. And it's funny because, like, it's almost like they, you know, when I'm having these conversations with certain dudes, and I was literally just having this conversation with somebody, because he just is struggling to see the connection. And it's like the ways in which he was talking to me, it's like, dude, this is the same thing white people say about us. You know, these are the same things that, like, other people say, like, oh, you know, but I have struggles too because I'm poor. And it's like, yo, nobody's saying that you don't have struggles. You just don't have struggles because of your race if you're a white person, you know. And for men, it's like, we're not saying that you don't have struggles as a Black man. You do, but your struggles are because of or more inextricably tied to your race than anything else.
Right.
Because everywhere else you fall in the confines of white supremacist patriarchy, especially if you got money, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely agreed.
Yeah,
so much agreed. And it's so funny because even if you look at African American history, past slavery, beyond slavery, and back to our roots in Africa, we didn't have this in our society. Men and women were equal. Yeah, there were kings, but the queens were treated as equal, and to be honest, contribute and did more than the man patriarchy did. So I find it weird that in African American culture, this is the mindset we have adapted because we've been indoctrinated and essentially brainwashed through slavery and civil rights, Jim Crow, Reconstruction, and oppression in general to be where we are now. And here we are trying to do better for ourselves, and yet it's Black man against Black woman and Black culture against just everything else. One question I was going to bring up that you kind of not destroyed, but you kind of answered was like, how do you feel about geek culture taking from Black culture so much? You know, but every culture takes from Black culture.
Very much so. Very much so. And that's why it's all the more reason for us to embrace our culture and to be proud of it, because if not, I forgot what it was, a quote that I read, and it was saying that the fastest way to take something from someone is to convince them that it has no value. And that makes me think about gentrification. You know, like we were convinced that the hood had no value until we lost it. And same thing with like hip hop, you know, and a lot of different pieces of Black culture. You know, it's like the minute we stop becoming active in protecting those things, that's when we start to lose it. Just to kind of give you some insight from my great uncle, who's 87, and he was part of a class action lawsuit that addressed discrimination at the Library of Congress where he was working. And, you know, he told me when I was interviewing him, I was like, hey, is there any advice or words of wisdom that you will offer like the younger people in my generation or the younger generation Z? And he said, our freedom as Black people and as minorities and marginalized people, like all the liberties that we had come to take for granted are something that we're always going to have to fight for. It's something that we're going to constantly have to reinforce. There is no finish line to this. That's why it's been many people's life's work for generations, is because, you know, it took us hundreds of years to get to this point, and it's going to be a constant push and a constant effort, if you will, to go against that grain.
Right. I agree. I definitely agree. Oh my God, this is such a real conversation we're having.
I appreciate it. I really needed this. And you spitting facts too, man. Your mom did something right for sure.
I mean,
and your grandma.
Well, you know, I don't mean to get all political, but you know, with the current status of America and they're trying to restrict voting rights again, I never thought in my life I would have to see that, because I heard the stories that my grandmother told me about 1963, 64 Voting Rights Act and all that stuff, because she was in it. You know, that was her. That was her, my time. Like, now is my time. That was her time.
Right.
You know, it just broke my heart hearing that, and now I'm seeing it all over again. Like, it's so funny how history repeats itself. And we shall not even talk about he who shall not be named, the former president.
Right.
That they are states are banning critical race theory, and I'm like, but if you call it critical race theory, of course you want to ban it. But if you just call it the facts of things that actually happen,
exactly,
it's so weird. And I'm like, I never thought I would see it in my lifetime, where even white people now are trying to whitewash history as I see it. I remember seeing what happened January 6th, 2021, and how 5 minutes later, Fox News is like, this was just a field trip gone awry. And
I'm like, for real.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Because I remember just a few weeks earlier or a few months earlier, when Black people were protesting in downtown DC, y'all had National Guard protecting monuments that we helped build.
For real. And even Baltimore, like the Freddie Gray protests, I remember them having tanks and, you know, like all these military vehicles, and they were armed with bulletproof. I'm like, yo, is all this really necessary for them to turn around and do that? And then there was a woman who got lost, and she was driving around the Capitol, and they gave her, you know, ambiguous instructions. And when she went in a direction that they didn't want her to go in, they shot at her vehicle. This was a Black woman driving by herself with her kid in the back seat, her baby, and they shot and killed her. But then you got people running up, and this was like this was a few years ago, you know. So for us to have heard about that, and then they tried to vilify her, made it seem like she was high on PCP, you know, all this other stuff. So seeing that, and then particularly, you know, me having grown up in DC when it was Chocolate City, and how the city has changed and everything. Like, first of all, let's be real. If DC was still Chocolate City, January 6th would have never happened.
True.
It would have never happened. They would have been far too afraid to set foot. But now, with the city and the area being so gentrified, they're so emboldened to just do whatever they want. Because, you know, unfortunately, white liberalism is a thing. And, you know, there's oftentimes people who are supposed to be politically aligned with, you know, with equality and all these other things. They're giving too much space and too much room for these terrorist actions to take place. Because that's ultimately what it is. And that's the whole, you know, point. Is like, yo, you're treating this argument like it's two sides of the same coin, when the other side of the coin is saying Black people are inferior. You know, like, how is that even a argument? How are we even allowing the space to entertain this, for real? So that opened the door for Charlottesville. It opened the door for, you know, January 6th. And until we have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to racism and all these other isms, they're going to continue to persist.
I got a little difference in opinion on that.
Okay.
First thing I want to say is I lived in DC in 2011 for about a year or so. You can take the city away from Black people, but you can't take Black people away from the city.
That's real.
It's Chocolate City, regardless of what time frame or era it is. The only reason why what's happening now is because he who shall not be named made it okay for those people to be emboldened and to feel like that their homestead and their life is being threatened. And you know, if it's white, it's right. And I hate to say that, but that's just American culture.
Right.
If white people do it, and I'm not trying to be political on this podcast, it's not what it's meant to be, but if certain people in this country do it, it's okay. But as soon as someone darker than them do it, it's a problem. You can look at voting rights or voting in general. You can look at gun rights and gun control. And
like Philando Castile, how he was legally within his right to have a gun, and it's definitely a double standard for sure.
I'm going to bring it back to the podcast, but everything said and how political just got, it goes down to every level, including if you can like Superman or Goku and being able to cosplay as those characters. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a con and seen Black and white people cosplaying as the same character, but everyone white saying a Black person can't cosplay as an Asian character, but white people can. That blows that type of thing blows my mind, among everything else that we have said. But this is America, and we live here, and we just got to make it better. We got to make it better. Not make it great again, but just make it better.
Right, because that's misleading.
Right. When was it ever great? Oh, okay, that's what.
Define great.
1950s great. Oh, that's what you meant. That's a different.
Right.
How significant are fraternities and sororities to the Black community?
Extremely significant. And of course, no community is a vacuum. I think every institution, if you will, has its, areas of improvement or whatever. But I think by and large, the Black fraternity and sorority community has been vital to our to being an organized movement. Because, a lot of our greatest leaders of civil rights were part of these organizations. So they learned through matriculating in these organizations how to run, legally recognized organizations, and how to organize at a grassroots level where it's not just a bunch of random people doing things, but it's actually organizations who are coming together. And even further than that, when they founded the National Pan-Hellenic Council. And it's like, okay, now we're in coalition. It's more than just grassroots organizing. Now it's coalition building. So I think that those organizations were so vital to all the successes and the strides that we've made, and being, continuing to be organized, whether it's some small grassroots organization or a big 501c3 like Delta. It's imperative that we are remain organized, remain committed, and remain integral to the principles upon which these organizations were founded, because we really are kind of like one of the biggest driving forces when it comes to advancing our rights.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I definitely agree. I myself wish I kind of had, I don't want to say had, because I did have the opportunity to join a fraternity when I was in college, but I let my own issues get in the way of doing that. And it's been something I've looked back and was like, man, I really wish I went Greek.
It's never too late, especially if you got your degree. It's something that, and I know people who've crossed over in alumni chapters who love it. So it's something, worth considering, but it's something that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. Like, I love being a Delta. I really do. And it still feels surreal to me every time I'm reminded that I'm a Delta. Like, I've been a Delta since 2008, but it still like floors me to be a part of such an amazing organization and to stand on the shoulders of the likes of Dorothy Height and, and Shirley Chisholm is just really, really humbling.
I think they're very proud to have you amongst their ranks and in their organization. I'm pretty sure you're going to turn it upside down and make so many new changes and just so many things better for just everybody. So just thank you for being a Delta. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for continuing encouraging young Black youth to get into fraternities and sororities. I do think it's very important. And I don't want to say like a crown jewel of the Black community, but like even I grew up knowing that at some point I need to get there. I need to be in a Greek sorority or a Greek fraternity myself and do all the Blackiest Black things I can ever Black to do. Because like I grew up, like I went to college in 2005, and in by 2007 I was being approached by who was it? Sigmas wanted me to join. It was 2007, and I was just reluctant. I had the grade point average, but it was just other things I was just kind of weary about. And long story short, I was worried for nothing because they wanted me to join, so I should have just did it and just follow suit, and I would have been better for it. But hey, like you said, it's never too late. I can always go back if I want. But I just like personally have always admired and like thought that the pinnacle of Blackness, especially when you're in college, is being in a fraternity or a sorority.
That's real. I appreciate that. I really do.
So let's start with HBCU Con. And first question I want to ask, which you've already answered, but just to reiterate, why start your own con?
I wanted to change the landscape not only of the con community in general, but also change the culture of how cons operate, whether it's how they treat their staff, or how we build on coalitions, how we highlight Black creators in the community and really being true to that. But also I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So I wanted to create an organization that could really stand on its own and set itself apart from all the other conventions, Black or otherwise. So when I thought back about the last time I felt fully accepted for all of who I am, it was when I was in college, and particularly amongst my friends in my dorm. I stayed in a dorm called Alex Haley Hall, which ironically, my uncle, who I just spoke of, was friends with Alex Haley. I stayed in Alex Haley Hall, and all the rooms were divided up into suites. There were 5 rooms in each suite, with 2 roommates in each room, and then we all shared a bathroom. So it was like 10 people per suite. In the suite downstairs, it was the guys' floor, but basically I became friends with two of the guys who stayed in that dorm room, and it was kind of like our home away from home. But it really was ultimately the beginning of the HBCU Con story, because that dorm room was like, we had video games, there were monitors all over the walls, people playing Dance Dance Revolution, people playing Guitar Hero, people watching anime, people talking about their personal issues or political issues. Like nothing was off the table. And I just really wanted to take that space and that experience and recreate it. My HBCU experience, everything from the Sweet 200 experience to Pledge and Delta to, you know, growing up in Chocolate City, it's affirmed who I am, and it's helped me move with confidence and purpose in a world that was not designed for us.
That's really interesting. And you know, just as a side note, I find it fascinating because you're part about the 20th interview I've done since I've started doing this last year.
Okay.
Everyone has said so far that their geek experience or blurred experience changed or really didn't start until they hit college. Like maybe even a little bit in high school, but it was college where Black nerds started to become themselves and be and flourish and be accepted and see other Black nerds. So I don't know what you make of that, but you know, there it is.
Well, you know, college is a journey of finding yourself, and so that 18 to 25 are critical years. You know, the average college age, because you're really finding yourself, and finding out who you are without being under the constant thumb of your family or your local community, which may or may not be a good thing, but it's allowing you to go out there and be yourself and kind of figure things out on your own and find your own people without the cloud of influence of being disapproved or anything like that.
Gotcha. I understand. I agree. I definitely agree. So take me back to before official year one of HBCU Con. What is the process like of starting your own convention?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, I would say you got to have one of two things, and really preferably both if you can swing it. You either need a lot of money or you need an extremely strong network. You know, I didn't really have much of the former. Like, I'm blessed to be privileged enough that my parents are, you know, middle class, and they're able to support me in ways that some other people's parents can't support them. So I'm grateful for that, but I'm not a millionaire. You know, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars I can just drop on an event. So I had to do a lot of base building. And one of my mentors told me this. Her name is Mickey, and she's actually a granddaughter of a Tuskegee Airman. She said, don't be afraid to start small. She said some of the biggest conventions that are out right now started in a little library or started in, you know, some random gym. And that, when she said that, that really resonated with me, because I felt such an enormous amount of pressure to pull off this huge overzealous event that I just, you know, didn't have the means for. And even further than that, you know, I had a mentor tell me, like, hey, you know, make sure you have someone else help you build on your finances, because you're very passionate and your passion will leave you broke if you're not careful.
Oh my God, you're just preaching to the choir.
Man, listen. So it's like, you know, a lot of people in the community, even people like yourself, like, we don't do this because we think we're gonna, you know, amass all this wealth or fame or anything. Especially with all the trials and tribulations and the work that comes with it. We do it because we love it. And that's essentially what I did. So I started testing the waters and trying to get a feel for who attended HBCUs. I was looking for geeks who attended HBCUs and or geeks who were in fraternities and sororities, just to kind of see like where the two communities collided. And then I started doing panels, and I came up with this panel, A Different World, HBCU Geeks, which pretty much tapped into living at that intersection and what life is like And of course, all of us had different experiences because some of us went to, schools in the DMV, some of us went to schools in the South, or in the Midwest, or whatever the case may be. So all of us had no two experiences were alike, which I think was a really cool thing. And as I started doing these panels, I noticed that there were two types of people who were coming to these panels, right? Actually, three. You had a small group of folks who fit into both of those confines. They're HBCU students or alum, and they're also nerds, and they've never really felt themselves called out to a space like this. But also you have folks who attended a HBCU who are very new or apprehensive to the geek community, but they're very interested in getting involved and they love the cosplay stuff. They may not want to dress up themselves, but they are very much about what it is. And then you have folks in the geek community who have little to no context of the HBCU lifestyle other than what they've seen on TV. Or maybe they have family members who went to a HBCU or something like that, and they're hungry for that experience. So the more and more I did these panels, and then it became, another panel, She Saves the Day, which is my panel for empowering women and femmes. Behind the Controller, which is I was about to say podcast, a panel around animation, and particularly animation in video games. Like, hey, we're buying all these video games, spending all this money. Let's be part of the teams that make these games too. And having people who do that on these panels. So the more and more I kept building on top of the program and really like honing in on what is the purpose of HBCU Con, like not making it like a gimmick where we have an HBCU Con panel, but kind of tapping into all the different topics to show people this is what it's all about. And then of course there was building the online presence, like having a strong online presence is key. You got to have a website. Like I had a website long before I had a convention, that, a website that establishes your values, your mission statement, and be as explicit as you possibly can, because you don't want to leave anything to guesswork or interpretation, especially when you have an organization that's built like this. That's something that I've come to realize. Like I need to be explicit about the fact that we are a queer affirming convention. We are a convention that uplifts and respects Black women. We are a convention that uplifts and respects handy-capable folks, or Black people in the international community, or whatever the case may be. So that's something that I would definitely say. And it's not just enough to like type these things and to talk a good game. You got to really follow through on all the things that you're saying, because if you sell the community one dream and then you give them another, you give them another reality, eventually people are going to see the disconnect and be like, yo, this isn't adding up. You said this event was for us, So that's something that I am super cognizant of. And I feel the weight of the HBCU legacy and really taking it to the next level. I feel it constantly. And it's not even in a way, sometimes it makes me anxious and nervous, but most of the time it gives me a lot of sense of purpose and pride. And it makes me that much more assertive when it comes to boundaries and just like really being careful with who I align myself with.
That's so very true. That's so very true. You got to be careful, especially in these day and ages. Take me back to year one of HBCU Con, which would have been 2020, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So take me through that whole ordeal of you getting ready for a con and then literally the world ends and you can't.
Bruh, you want to talk about having I don't want to say I had a nervous breakdown, but I was definitely caught off guard by that. And the crazy thing about it is that I didn't even get to like really enjoy, or not even enjoy, I didn't get to digest the fact that the event was canceled, because I wound up having to deal with my father being in the hospital. from
Right.
COVID. So he actually went into the hospital the day the con was supposed to happen, April 4th. And he got checked in with COVID, and he would subsequently be hospitalized for about 4 months. He came out like July 29th, so just before the 4-month mark. But yeah, that was kind of like really, I think that it wasn't a coincidence that happened. I think that 2020 put a lot of things in perspective for me and made me realize how much I was kind of like hyper focusing on the wrong things. And that, at the end of the day, our family is all we got. Whether that's your biological family or your, because to me, a lot of my friends, especially my older friends, they're considered part of the family. But it was definitely a pivot. And I really couldn't focus on pivoting until my father came home, quite frankly. It just consumed so much of my thought process. So that being said, once he got out, that was when my vice president was like, hey, let's consider doing a virtual event, which I still didn't really like. I didn't like the idea because it wasn't what I envisioned. And I'm very adamant about seeing and determined about seeing my vision through to fruition. But I was hesitant, and I wound up agreeing to do it. And I was very pleased with the outpouring of support. Like, we had a good 35 panels over the course of the 2021 event. So it was just really heartwarming to see that despite the fact that we couldn't physically get together, people just wanted to be in that space or anything that felt like that space. And I'm just proud that my father pulled through. We're happy that he pulled through. And now he's like one of my biggest supporters,
I'm glad that worked out and everyone's okay. And especially your father. And I'm just glad he was able to make it because a lot of people did.
Exactly. And I know that we've all experienced grief on some level. Some of us lost our loved ones, some of us lost our jobs, so it's definitely given me that much more of a motivation to create spaces like this because we really need it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the reasons why you had a lot of fallback from the virtual con thing, or at least with your experiences, because it's not what people wanted at that time, especially with what was going on.
Right.
It just seemed like the whole virtual con thing, whether it was your con or anyone's con or any event, was just a constellation prize, or this is the best we can do. And we're all in the new normal and we don't know how to deal with it. And nobody at first was feeling any type of virtual con or Zoom meeting, but now it's the new normal. And
right.
A lot of cons are doing both in person and virtual events. So
right.
Now we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I don't want to say best of both worlds, but I feel like we have become stronger because of what we've gone through in the last 27,000 years. It feels like.
That's funny.
So I'm glad that everything worked out with your father, because like I said, it could have been so much worse, and that could have been a whole different conversation. But let's go into 2022 and tell me about you actually having an in-person event and how that was to finally have all this work culminate to an in-person event.
Yeah, it's definitely been very surreal, very humbling. And of course we're doing hybrid so that folks who aren't able to attend in person can still be there virtually. It's a heavy lift, but I'm looking forward to it because it's been such a long time coming. But I'm excited. Oh, and I guess I could tell you more about the event. I always forget. I'm so driven by the passion of the why, but we're going to have a step show. We are having a gaming lounge gaming tournament that is sponsored by MagFest. Really proud to be working with MagFest. We are going to have some anime screenings for folks. We are having a fashion show, Super Slay, the multiverse of fashion. Of course, a lot of dope panels and vendors, Artist Alley, and just a lot of really cool, we're just planning a really dope event that we want the community to be proud of.
I think you're offering a lot for the community to be proud of, and you're doing things differently than other Black conventions from what I've been kind of researching on. Step show, I think that's interesting because I haven't seen any of the other Black cons do that, but ultimately that is something that's in our culture.
Right.
So that makes perfect sense for HBCU Con to be doing that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, really tapping into those aspects of the homecoming experience, but also not just the homecoming experience, but the HBCU experience in general, and how that can kind of be done in a very geeky way, in a way that's centered around geek culture. I'm looking forward to it.
Right, because when you think of HBCU, you don't 100% get geek or Black geek from it. You get educated, dignified young Black youths who are out trying to change the world, but you don't get Star Wars, Power Rangers, and Star Trek from it. So I think that's an interesting fit of putting those two things together, because when you think about it, it makes sense. Like, anyone who's in the HBCU and going to college would be interested in a lot of these other things that are going on in geek culture, right?
Right, of course.
So I think that's really good that you're putting both those worlds together. And it sounds like your con is not just for Black geeks. It sounds like your con is just for the Black experience. And you're trying to give, hey, this is what the Black experience on a positive side is like, and what we want to show to the future generations. And I really am grateful for that.
Thank you. That really means a lot. That's the most humbling thing about this process, is the way people just get it. And I think it's a testament of the hard work from not just me, but the whole team. It really has been a collaborative effort. We're all doing this pro bono, and it's just so, it feels so surreal. Like, wow, okay, I got a real team of like really smart people. How did I do this?
That's so interesting, because my next question I was about to ask you was just to ask you to, go through your supporting staff and the people who help make this possible.
Oh gosh, if I name them all, we'll be here all night. But definitely my vice president, Wendell Smith. Got to give a huge shout out to him. My publicist, Ian Freeman. Of course, my parents, more than anything else. It's just been so remarkable to see how they've kind of come around from not knowing anything about this lifestyle to now, investing in helping me and my business get off the ground. So, and, they ain't got it like that. So for them to give me any, substantial amount of support, whether it's monetary or otherwise, is a big thing. Because, our parents be like, what do you need this for?
A convention.
Right. What you need a convention for? So, Lord, I almost got choked up over that. Gotta thank my whole team, my line sister Tomika, my line sister Ashley Daniels, Dana Morgan, who does so much work for not just the cons in Atlanta, but a lot of the cons around the country. Talin Kell, who's kind of like Talin and Kell and Erica Hardison and Regine Sawyer. I would say they're like my muses. They're like my Black feminist muses, where I'm constantly tapping into their thought processes and kind of picking their brains on certain things. And they help keep me grounded also. And then Clarissa Clay, the founder of Blurred City. Regine Sawyer is the founder of Women in Comics Collective, by the way. But Clarissa Clay from Blurred City is just such a sweetheart, just really sweet, really compassionate and loving. Definitely got to shout out Nuri and Moana McAdams of The Burning Spear. I got to shout out Demetrius Angelo of Urban Action Showcase. And just a slew of just really wonderful people. Tajua and Joshua Buttram of Amani Exchange. I could really go on and on. Like, I really could. Venture Bros Cosplay. I can't forget about him. It's just been so many people. I can't even fathom the amount of support. And it really does feel like every moment of my life has led me to this point. Every person I've met, every experience I've had has brought me to this point, and I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful to all the folks who have pledged to our Kickstarter thus far. We got 4 days left. So, and we're 85% to our goal, which is phenomenal. So it's just been a real labor of love, dude. And I definitely got to shout out David Hooker, Natasha Lee Hooker, and Marcus Brooks, who were all part of that original, and Louisa Spencer, who were all part of the original Sweet 200 experience. And really, they're all on our staff, on my staff. So it really is a family affair, and it's a passion project for all of us.
Understandable. Definitely understandable. So what are some of your future goals for HBCU Con? What do you want to achieve, and where do you want this convention to go in the future?
Absolutely. So my dream for HBCU Con is for it to become a full-fledged, all-encompassing event for, you know, the HBCU community and Black geeks of all walks of life to come together and connect. I would like to have our flagship event to either remain in the DMV, or the only other place I could probably see it working on like an annual basis might be Atlanta. But we are very much in conversation and looking towards partnering with other institutions around the country so that we can have an event in addition to our flagship event. You know, we can take it on the road and partner with, you know, Texas Southern or Hampton or Tougaloo College. So that is ultimately the goal, is to really take this thing on the road and kind of bring the Black Geek homecoming experience to those communities. Just see where it goes. You know, I didn't even fathom making it this far. So, but I've got big dreams and big plans for the organization, all in the name of community and culture.
You know, just on, again, just outside looking in, I think it would be so dope if you had like a traveling HBCU Con and you went to all the major HBCU cities across the East Coast, the South, and wherever other HBCUs are, and you do like a weekend, like a mini con type of event. Like you come down to Atlanta, come to EU Center where all the historically Black colleges here. Then, you know, Alabama, you got Tuskegee, and Texas. I think that would be so dope.
Right.
You just touring different college campuses and doing mini events. That by itself could like be revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because, you know, I've done grassroots organizing and workshops in a lot of these areas, like the Mississippi Delta area, Louisiana, and what have you. And I think that it would be just so cool to kind of like bring the experience to those schools, because not only will it make it more visible to the students and the faculty who go to these campuses, or in often instances live on these campuses, but it also gets the communities involved. And I think it would be just cool for, you know, Black people in the Mississippi Delta area to see us dressed up as superheroes. Like, how revolutionary is that? And to actually be talking about it.
That would be very dope. And then just the other factor, you know, not trying to say that Black people can't do this, but, you know, a lot of us don't have means to travel to DC or to Atlanta and things like that. And you coming to us and like, hey, we're this con, and not only are we going to show you HBCU stuff, we're going to show you all the Black characters and everything that's every pop culture, and just have this together. We've got cosplayers and comic book creators and writers and actors and actresses, and I think that would be so dope. You just do that and travel. That would be a good way to help you grow, and then even become bigger and just go to just any college campus and just bring this experience anywhere. That would be so cool. Oh my God, I can't wait to see that happen. I think I just got myself more excited than I should.
I'm hip. I appreciate it. I really do. I really do.
Because like I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, I do all the Atlanta cons a lot since that's my hometown and where I currently live. But I would love to go to HBCU Con. I would love to go to Blurred Con, which is also in DC. I lived in DC, and they have a lot of cons that I wish I had a chance to get to. and just travel and things like that. That's just personally one of my goals, is to be traveling cosplay photographer, going across different cons and finding all the Black people underneath all the rocks who didn't think that Black people did this.
I know that's right. Well, I'm here for it. We'll be waiting for you, and I'm definitely going to get down back to Atlanta one way or another.
You should. Obviously, you should. I don't know if you've heard any of my other episodes, but my last episode, I did an interview with C.S. Sherman. He's the founder.
Oh, yeah. Black Geeks of Dragon Con.
There you go. And like, when I was talking with him, and then after we talked, I was like, I brought up that I would be interviewing you and Wendell, and he was like, oh yeah, he just kind of talked me up about it. And I was like, it'll be so amazing if Black Geeks of Dragon Con and HBCU Con and Blerd Con and all these Black nerd organizations came together and just did some amazing stuff. Even, if they did it separately or just brought everyone up together and we just did some big multi-event, I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, well, my the grassroots and coalition building, that's what I do.
Right.
So I'm all about solidarity and I've already been in conversation with CS, and he's helped promote our Kickstarter. Just really appreciative of him. And that's ultimately the goal for me, is to build these coalitions. And that's why I've been working with folks like Regine Sawyer from the Women in Comics Collective, or, Clarissa Clay from Blerd City, or Cerise Murphy, who started Virtuous Con, all these spaces, even if they're not explicitly Black spaces, but they're run, by us. That's something that I'm really big on. And I'm also just big on making sure that we align ourselves with organizations who, have the best interest of the community at heart, and that they're relationships that are mutually yoked. Because that's something that I've kind of noticed a lot, and not just the Blerd community, but like in other communities the world over, is they'll tend to eat their own. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think that there's enough room for everybody to succeed and for everybody to do their own thing, and to collaborate with each other too. I'm open, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. And I'm just really proud to have built the coalition that I've built thus far, quite frankly.
And your coalition is only going to get stronger by the day. Trust me. You have started a snowball effect. Whether you know it or not, this is going to get bigger and grow a lot faster than you think it is. So I just hope you're ready. That's ahead of you, but you started something that you can't put back in its cage.
I know. What have I done?
So in like 10 years, when the biggest con in America is a Black-owned con, like you're going to be there. Like, I helped bring that to the forefront.
That's real.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
That's real, but it's going to happen. I guarantee you, it's going to happen.
I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate the affirmation and all the even just having me on this show. It really means a lot. The outpouring of support and folks who have just really just made themselves known. Like, hey, we're here to help. What can we do for you? It means the world to me.
I'm just appreciative of you, because I don't know if you know this, but I've only heard of HBCU Con as of last year. I went to a convention called Ranger Stop.
Yes.
At a panel there with some cosplayers I knew. And
that's right. You were there.
As soon as me and my assistant walked in, all I hear is HBCU and HBCU this and that, and we're all nerds. And I was like, I'm gonna sit down and actually record this podcast, because I wanted to record that panel, because I wanted to put it in one of my vlogs. And when I went to go edit the vlog, it's like 2 hours long because of that one panel. Like, I recorded the whole panel. Two of the usual Rangers were there. Some other people were there who, I didn't know about, but now that I know about, I can't forget them, even though I forget the names now. But I'm just like, I can't wait to see this HBCU Con in action. And then when you and Wendell hit me up, because of Dana, by the way, who every time I turn under a rock and look at Black cosplay, she's already there. And I'm just like, oh man, she's everywhere.
Yeah, she be on it.
So yeah, she introduced us, and I was like, oh, I can't believe that this was something I wrote on a secret piece of paper and put under my pillow to wish to happen, and it happened. I kid you not, that day I went home from Ranger Stop and I wrote down I want to do an interview with whoever does HBCU Con. couple of months later, it came into existence. So you
I know that's right.
And I sit here and realize we have talked a lot and have a whole other section of podcasts we didn't even get to. But that's fine. We can always, I think I definitely want to have you back on.
I would love that.
And we can talk about anything under the sun. But I'll save this next section for the next time you're on. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about the Kickstarter and where people can find it and what you hope to get from the Kickstarter?
Sure. So our goal is 15,000. The campaign launched on January 19th and it is running through Monday, February 21st. So you have until Monday to make your pledge. We're, I believe, like 2,300 short of reaching our goal. We're like 85% funded. So we've got 4 days left to raise at least that 15K. If we make more, we get to keep it. But if not, then, it goes back. It never gets deducted. A lot of people aren't really familiar with Kickstarter, but basically when you pledge, the money is deducted from your account the day the campaign ends. So if you pledge today, the money's not coming out of your account until Monday. And then there's also an informational video up on our Kickstarter page. There's a ton of like background information, all the things that we just talked about, and even some more like expounding on the foundation of our organization. All that's there. And a lot of people don't know this too. With Kickstarter, you get rewards for your donations. You can select a certain tier and you could get anything from a sticker to a pass to the convention or passes for you and your friends. So definitely check that out. And I want to thank everyone so much for those who have contributed or shared the link. It all means so much. It really does.
Okay, cool. And so again, you will be having HBCU Con this year, 2022. Do you have the dates and all that information?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll be forgetting the most important stuff.
I was going to let you forget that. I make sure I was going to end with that.
I appreciate that. So it is happening April 29th through May 1st. That's Friday through Sunday on the campus of my beloved alma mater, Bowie State University, the oldest historically Black college in the state of Maryland, in gorgeous Prince George's County.
Oh my God. I lived in Prince George's County when I lived.
So you know what it is. You know PG.
Oh, yeah.
Where in PG did you live?
District Heights and Capitol Heights.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I got family from District Heights and Capitol Heights, that whole little area.
Yeah, that whole little area. I didn't enjoy my time up in DC, by the way. I didn't. It's not because of DC. DC is a beautiful city. I guess I'm a homeboy and I'm born and raised in Atlanta, and you took me out of Atlanta a little too long. I was like, nope, I got to go back.
Oh, yeah, it do be getting cold up here.
Yeah. Oh my God. The day I moved up to DC, it had snowed like all over the East Coast, and I had to take Greyhound up there and be in it on the way up there. And I got there. I was like, I've never seen so much snow in my life. And instantly was like, nope, until the snow melt, I'm not going to unpack or anything. And it snowed again while I was up there. So I was not happy about it. I was like, I got to go back to what people call a drink of Coke, and everything on the menu is Coca-Cola. I got to go back to Atlanta. This is not it for me. I miss.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like a split here because it's like Pepsi. My mom is team Coca-Cola. My dad is team Pepsi, I think.
I'm team, it's all Coca-Cola, regardless of what it is. And I've realized since then, Atlanta is the only area in the United States that calls any type of dark cola just Coke. But everybody else either call it pop or soda or drink or something else. So well, that's a little weird.
Yeah, it depends. I think people like will say the specific brand. Like nobody says cola. You know what I'm saying? Like we'll say, can I get Coke or Pepsi or Sprite? You know what I'm saying? Like we won't be like, can I get that lemon lime soda? We say the specific name. And then what happens is they'll be like, oh, we have Pepsi products or whatever the case may be. And then some people will be like, that's fine. And then some people will be like, no, Coke or nothing.
I'm sorry, I'm a coconut. I don't think you're allowed to drink anything. If you're born in Atlanta, you have to stick with Atlanta stuff.
Yeah, that's
as painful as that is. But so do you have any actual guests you can name that will be attending this year that people might want to look forward to?
You said panels?
No, or panels or guests or any artists that's coming to HBCU Con that.
Oh yeah. So we're gonna have, like I said, Venture Bros, Tranquil Ashes are coming through. I got my homegirl, Natasha Lee from Insomniac Games. She helped create Spider-Man 4, Titanfall 2, and also the Miles Morales game.
She's very popular.
Yes, she actually is behind a good chunk of the Black Lives Matter artwork in that game. So yeah, I'm just so proud to be her friend. Like, you have no idea. But yeah, a lot of dope folks coming through. Trying to think of who else is committed to. Clarissa Clay says she's coming through. DJ Reese from 93.9 WKYS is coming through, and he's going to be DJing our after party and step show. DJ Taylor Senpai will also be there. So we got those two talented DJs who are going to help us make sure this event is lit. Yeah, just a whole host of people. I'm trying to think. Oh, Charlie Rocket cosplay is coming through. The usual Rangers, I'm talking back and forth. I know they'll at least come virtually if they can't come in person, but I know they're trying to come in person. Trying to think if I forgot anybody who is like confirmed already. I think that's pretty much a lot of the bigger names. Oh, Miss Skittles. Forgot about Miss Skittles. And I don't know if you're familiar with Kyle Murdoch. He produces music for Mega Ran and a bunch of other nerdcore rappers. He actually went to Hampton, and he teaches at Howard. He teaches like media and production. So really looking forward to have him come through and speak as well.
Cool. Sounds like it's going to be a blast. I can't wait to see it for myself. Yeah. I am definitely planning a trip up to Maryland just for this in that area. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything works out and you'll be seeing me in person. And I don't know, maybe do something when we up there.
Yeah, we could get some Korean barbecue or something.
Oh my God, you love Korean barbecue too?
Please, are you serious? It's like my religion now.
I'm secretly been timing this podcast because I'm going to Korean barbecue as soon as we're done recording.
I am not mad at that at all. Do your thing. Have some spicy pork belly for me.
It's my favorite.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I love that. And if they have the spice, not everybody has it, but some of the places got the spicy pork bulgogi. That's my shit right there.
Okay, I have to be on the lookout for the spicy pork bulgogi.
Yeah, because it's like
bulgogi, but I haven't seen anyone have spicy pork bulgogi.
Yeah, or they'll call it spicy shredded pork. Because what I like about it is it's tender, and but it's not as fatty as the pork belly is. But I like both. You know, I can just eat more of the bulgogi because it's not as fatty in terms of like it's a little bit leaner.
Right, right. And I have noticed it's a lot. You can eat a lot more if you stick with the leaner stuff because the fatty will just kind of build up in your stomach. And
the fatty stuff fill you up quick.
That sort of tea, because that will help with the digestion of.
Yes, the tea. I be getting the hot tea. And I try to pace myself with the rice and not eat too much rice at one time because that'll fill me up real quick too.
I stop eating rice when I go because I'm like, that's the trap right there. Rice and water. Just avoid those at all you can eat Korean barbecue place. You'll be fine.
Yeah, very much so. And the lettuce wraps help too.
Oh, you know about the lettuce wraps?
Yes, the lettuce wraps. I feel like it makes it easier to digest.
Yes. And you get more lettuce than you do lotus wraps. So I always get with the lettuce wraps. All right, so you just like me. Okay. You like
we are definitely two sides of the same coin, it seems. I'm here for it. So yes, when you come up here for HBCU Con, me, you, and Dana will get Korean barbecue and whoever else.
Sounds like a plan to me. Sounds like a plan.
Yay.
But we're going to go ahead and end the podcast here. Is there any other lasting words or anything you want to say to my audience before we end?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you so much again for this. And I'm looking forward to coming back. Your great conversation. And just want to say thank you to everyone who has continued to support me and HBCU Con. And I just hope and I'm very much looking forward to what the future holds, and just continuing to build this community out into something that we can all, like I keep saying it, but that something that we can all be proud of and kind of feel like a second home, if you will. Because that's what my HBCU is to me. It feels like going home. So I just really want to take that level of affirmation and love that I got and give it back to the world. So I hope that everyone feels that when they come to this event.
I think a lot of people are going to feel at home, and you're going to have problems kicking people out your house.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
But like I said, I can't wait to go. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a ball and everything's going to work out great. So just thank you so much for just wanting to be on my podcast and just wanting to promote HBCU Con. I feel like a lot more people need to hear about it. Just for poops and giggles, for people who joined in on the podcast late, just tell them where they can find you again on social media and the internet.
Sure. So our Kickstarter campaign, we have 4 days left. It ends Monday, February 21st. You can go to our Instagram page at HBCU Con. You can also visit our website or go to kickstarter.com and type in HBCU Con, and the Kickstarter will come right up. Our website is www.hbcucon, that's hbcucon.org. And of course, you can find our link tree. Our link tree is linktree/HBCUCon. And as for me, I'm CC The Geek on all platforms except for Twitter. I am CC The Greek Geek.
All right. And just again, thank you so much for being so informative and passionate about everything that you do. Thank you for bringing HBCU Con to all the Black youths out there who are into geek culture and also in the HBCU culture. And just thank you for being you and being a pioneering woman in this field. I cannot wait to have you back on my show again.
Thank you. That means a lot. And likewise, you're a pioneer as well, my friend.
I'm just here doing stuff I would be doing.
Nope, not accepting that. You're a pioneer. More than you might recognize, but I'm gonna help you recognize it. It's okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Because like I said, I would just be doing this because it's what I like to do.
I feel that. Sometimes that's all it takes to do something revolutionary.
Yeah, I agree. But for everybody else out there, thank you for listening to Blurred Cash. You can find me on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, as well as on YouTube under Blurredography. Let me know what you think about this episode on my social media. You can follow me at Blurredography everywhere across the board on social media, internet, interwebs, website. Blurredography is there for you. Except on Reddit, because I have not figured that one out. But again, just thank you. And I'd like to thank my guest, CC The Geek, for being on and just being so insightful and lovely, and just like, we're gonna have a whole nother conversation after that.
Man, I'm telling you.
But all right, see everybody later, and mahalo.